Good morning and welcome to today's masterclass. We are going to be talking about how to get started as a Christian writer without fear holding you back. Because I know that if God has put something big on your heart and wants you to get it out there, that you need all of the support that you can get in order to move forward in confidence because He has already given you everything you need to make this successful. I cannot wait to dig in with you today and really make sure that you know what the first steps need to be. So, welcome this morning. I have my water and I hope you are ready to go and learn so much this morning so that when you leave, you are pumped, you are excited, you are ready to grab that computer, grab that pen and paper, and put words to paper. I cannot wait. And so here is what we are going to do today. We are going to talk about why you don't have to know that you're a writer to start writing. We're going to show how you can overcome fear and perfectionism that might be currently keeping you stuck. And I am going to share with you 5 myths and then break them that typically keep Christians who know God has placed this calling on their lives from moving forward. And hopefully, by breaking these myths, it will allow you to step into what God has actually called for you. All right. I'm also going to give you a practical framework to get you started and get you writing. So I cannot wait to share all of this with you this morning. I think it is going to be absolutely fabulous. If you would right now join me, let's go to the Lord in prayer and ask Him to join us this morning and bless our time together. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for these precious people who are watching with me this morning, who are joining me via replay later. Father, I thank you so much that you are calling each of them to write a book. Lord Jesus, I ask that you clarify for each one of them what it is you want on the page, that you show them exactly what they need to do to move forward, that you open the doors for them to work with those professionals that you are going to be bringing into their lives, those book coaches, the editors, all of the people that are made specifically to help their book come to life. And Father, I pray for the readers of these books that they are ready and waiting to read the words that you have for them. And through those words, that you will do a mighty work in each of those readers' lives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, I cannot wait to get started. So let me share my screen with you this morning. Um, Hold on one second. Oh, how to get started as a Christian writer. I'm going to pop myself over here onto the corner of the screen so that I can still see you. You can still see me. All right. I cannot wait to dig in with all of this morning. After today, you are going to know how to silence that fear, overcome doubt, and take actionable steps towards writing. You are going to be able to write your story with confidence. If you're watching on replay, grab pen and paper, get ready to take some notes because I have some amazing things for you. All right, I want you to be fully engaged in the chat, if not in the video. I want you to be present, okay? And make notes. Email me later if you're watching a replay. I would love to have a conversation with you. And stay tuned to the end. I will be cutting it off before the question and answer for the replay. But for those of you who are live, stay to the end. Join me for the question and answer. I have a special offer just for those of you who are attending live with me this morning. So, why do stories matter? Well, God created us, and in creating us, He created in us the ability to connect through stories. Jesus taught through stories because they do connect us, inspire us, and help us to grow. We want to be able to connect and inspire and grow. And we want to help those that we are called to serve do the same. So we are going to use our stories to do that. The power of your story is that God has brought you through something, not so that you then can be like, yay, I'm overcome that. I don't have to worry about that anymore, but so that you can then equip, encourage, and inspire others. Your story isn't just about you. Your story is to be used for the edification of the body or for evangelism, to bring others to know the saving power and glory of Jesus Christ. So that is the whole power of our story. God can use our testimony to encourage, equip, and inspire others. That's what the woman at the well did. God showed her who she was, and she then immediately ran out and told everyone, come and see this man who knew everything about me, who knew all of the things and loved me anyway. Come and meet him and see for yourself. That is what our story can do for others. So, who am I? I'm so glad you asked. I am Dr. Carolyn Wiley. I am passionate about helping Christians share their God given stories. I can remember even as a young child wanting so much to write. I was on the school newspaper and I would write at home and write these little short stories. When I went to college, I took an autobiography course because I was just so enamored with writing. My major was math, but that's because it was easy and it was what was expected of me. But my love, my passion, my minor was writing and English. And that was always so strange for people to hear this math major who had a passion for writing. And as you can see in the picture, I'm holding several of the traditionally published books that I've written, and most of them are statistics textbooks because I combined those loves of writing mathematics together. So I have just been given this unique opportunity by God in sort of act two right now of my life to help others do what I have done in act one, which was write and publish and bring these stories to help and edify others. And in fact, what is so interesting is this fear that I have seen in so many amazing Christians who God has told them very clearly that they are called to write, just like He did me. And yet I kept pushing it back. I kept pushing it back. I did other things like, okay, well, I'll write a statistics book, which is great and fabulous. And I learned so much from it. But I also knew God was calling me to write other things, but I wouldn't step into that. And in fact, I had two nationally successful statistics books out and published and making a full-time income from. And I still didn't even think of myself as a writer. And I was visiting with one of my co-authors on the statistics book, and she was saying the same thing. She's like, I didn't think of myself as an author, and my husband was introducing me, and that's what he called me. And I thought, what? I'm an author? And all of us were thinking, oh, that's right. We are authors. We are writers. It is literally our full-time job. So it is so amazing to see how the enemy can hide our identity from us right in front of our eyes. And that is what I want to help break off of you this morning. That if God has called you to write, you are a writer. And it doesn't matter if you've even yet put paper to pencil, because God has been calling you to write. All right, so let's then talk about my story. Because one of the things that I was able to do in this sort of, like I said, second act was begin sharing my story that led to transformed lives and traveling around talking about how God brought me out of years of rebellion. And you can see in the picture, I'm up there, that's my mom that is sitting next to me because her and I then began writing books together. so that we could share these stories that God had brought us through and write about it and write devotionals for women to help encourage them in their walk. Where I'm at right now is that process of helping other women and men share their stories that God has brought them through. And I have an amazing group of authors that we meet twice a week and are just having the absolute best time learning and growing together as writers. And I'll tell you more about that later. But right now, while you are here, what are these myths that I mentioned that are actually holding you back as an aspiring writer? One, the belief that, well, you know what? I'm not a real writer. So many people think, well, I'm not a real writer. So let's actually dig into that. Well, what do you mean a real writer? What does it mean? Does it mean you have a degree in writing? Does it mean you have published a book that is a national bestseller? Do you have to be on a New York Times bestseller list before you can say you're a real writer? What are the credentials? And guess what? The credentials are all made up. Literally, the reason people decide this person is a writer and this person is not is just their own bias and opinion. So, here is the truth. If God has said, I need you to write something, and you, okay, I will write, Lord, you're now a writer. That's all it takes. That's literally all it takes is owning the identity that God gives us. If He calls us a son or daughter, we say, yes, Lord, I am a son or daughter. If He calls us to be a leader, you say, yes, Lord, I'm a leader. If He calls us to sacrifice, yes, Lord, I'm someone who sacrifices. So taking on the identity that God gave you, because who is the only person that has the right to give us our identity? The one who created us. So if He has said, I need you to write, you are now a writer. So let's ignore that myth because what is even a real writer? Well, whatever people make up it is. So we're going to base our decision on our identity on the only person who truly gets to define our identity. Number two, the other thing I hear in so many coaching calls is, but my story isn't original. My story isn't good enough. Like I've seen it out there 500 times. Well, I have a redemption story, and I can literally list three New York Times bestsellers that share the exact same redemption story. But you know what's different? None of them are me. None of them are my story. So even if they were the same race, the same gender, the same economic background, maybe they had similar life experiences that brought them to the same points. Their story is still different than mine. And so your story absolutely is original because it's your story, because you have your own unique fingerprint, because God worked in your life in His own unique way. And there will be people that resonate with the way you tell your story that didn't resonate with the others. So your story not being original is a lie. That is a myth. There, even in literature, we're talking about fiction. Stories aren't original. How many times have you looked at something and they said, well, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, or this is a, take on Peter Pan? I mean, just to give some Disney examples. It's because we use literature as building blocks to create something new and unique. Your story is new and unique because God did the same thing. He created you. Number three, well, no one will care about my story. This is one of the biggest lies of the enemy. Because if you truly believe that no one will care about your story, why are you going to write it? Well, you won't. And if you don't write it, the people that God has already ordained to hear your story, be transformed by it, aren't going to listen because the story's not out there for them to hear it. And therefore, their transformation doesn't take place. So, will people care about your story? There's literally billions of people in the world. There will be people that care about your story. You know how I know for sure there will be people who care about your story? Because God told you to write it. And God does not waste words. God does not waste time and effort. His word never comes back to him void. And so if he is giving you something to put out there, it is because he has intentionality with it and he has a purpose for it. And so here is the truth. If God has called you to coach, to serve, to share your testimony, and you don't, then the lack of transformation in those people that he had already identified to be transformed by you, their lack of transformation falls on your shoulders. That's heavy. But if God has called you to put something out there and you do it, you're obedient, then whether they are transformed or not becomes an act of the Holy Spirit and is their obedience, and that's no longer on you. So you have to be very, very serious about this. If God has called you to serve through coaching, through service providers, through writing and sharing your testimony, writing a memoir, through educating through Christian fiction, if God is calling you to serve in these ways and then you don't, the people whose transformation was depending on what you had to say becomes something that you have to take ownership of. So we need to act in obedience. Myth number 4. I don't know if this is a myth, but this is definitely the misbelief that people have. They're like, well, I don't know where to start. Sure, you do. You know where you start? You start by grabbing a pencil and grabbing a piece of paper and you start writing. I know that sounds so simple. That is like the biggest piece of advice that I give new writers that they hate. They're like, no, Carolyn, it's really not that simple. It can't be that simple, or I would have already done it. No, it is that simple, but you're getting in your own way and you're allowing the enemy to get in your way with all of these lies that he's surrounding you with. And one of those lies is that it's not that simple. It actually is. It really is that simple that you just can put pencil to paper because all of the crafting, all of the outlining, all of the editing, all of that making it from words on a page into a manuscript comes second. There has to be something on the page to edit before we can edit. You have to have an idea before we can outline it. So all of those things that you're stuck in your head about, I've got to have before I get started, those are lies of the enemy designed to keep you from getting started. The truth is, you start by writing what God is calling you on a piece of paper, by putting that transformation down on paper. And then we can start editing and crafting. Now, you might say, well, I've watched so many videos and so many master classes, and I have heard so many book coaches talking about the way to write is to have this outline and this plot, and you have to go through all the subplots and all the subpoints and all of that. And that is absolutely perfectly fine and can totally be done. But if you're believing the lie of the enemy that if you don't know how to do all of that, you can't start, all of that, which for an experienced writer can be helpful, will actually stop the novice. So throw it all out the window and just start writing. It will be absolute crap. And guess what? That's fine. It's supposed to be. Like everybody expects it to be bad. Anybody who's been in the industry more than a minute knows that the first thing you're going to put on paper will be terrible. And we were all going to be like, yeah, you put something terrible on paper. But you're not putting something terrible on paper because you think our reaction will be, that's terrible. You're really not a writer. But what you're telling yourself is a lie of the enemy. You're believing the lie of the enemy. And I'm here right now telling you this morning, the truth is someone in the industry who is championing new writers will look at your absolutely terrible, awful thing and say, okay, you're not going to show anybody this, but it's so good that you got started. Here's your second step. That's what they're going to actually tell you. They're not going to tell you, this is terrible. You're not a New York Times bestselling author, so you have no business doing this. That's not what they're going to say. They're going to say, awesome, congratulations. Do you want to know what step 2 is? That's what they're going to actually say. So I don't know where to start. Yes, you do. You literally get you a pencil and you get you a piece of paper and you start writing. That's step one. You knew what it was all along. You've just convinced yourself that there needs to be more. And there's not. The last myth before we get into my writing framework is believing you're never going to get published, that you're never going to see that publishing contract that I have here, that there's never going to be something that says you are now a published author. Here is the amazing news in the time and place that you are living now. You can be a published author by uploading a PDF to Amazon with a book cover by this afternoon. Now, will that be a good book? Will it be something that sells? Probably not. But you could literally call yourself a published author because of the fact that we now have the technology to publish anything you want today. So then the question should no longer even be, can I get published? The question now is, how do I make this such that this is something worthy of edification of the body? How do I make this to the level and standard and quality that people will respect what has been put out there? That becomes the question, because anybody can be published now. We need to be thinking about, how do I craft this that God has called me to write such that it is worthy of that calling? The good news is there's very simple steps that you can follow to make sure that it is to that quality. There are professionals out there whose sole job is to make sure it is to that quality. So once again, don't worry about getting published. Worry about making what you publish quality work that you are proud to say God called you to write. And you can do that by asking one simple question: who, not how. Who already has the skills, the knowledge, the expertise that I need so that I can make this the quality it needs to be? Who can make my cover design? Who can format this? Who can edit it? Who can help coach me through the process? Because if you're asking who, not how, you are buying back years and years of time learning the how. So never getting published, complete lie in today's society. You can get published today. The question should be, how do I go about making this published work the quality I expect of myself? And the how is answered by asking who. Got it? Well, what is the actual first step? Well, we talked about it's putting pen to paper, but I know you really want more than that. So I do have a W.R.I.T.E framework, and that's literally what it is. It's the W.R.I.T.E framework. I love a good pun. And this is going to help you move from some vague idea and very clear calling in your heart to an actual manuscript that has been edited and ready for professionals to take it over the finish line. Okay, so let's go through this W.R.I.T.E framework. The first step, anytime that you want to organize your thoughts, is you need to understand your why. So you're going to work out your why. There's a great book by Simon Sinek called Start with Why. And that applies to so many things. He wrote it in specifically for business, but it applies to so many things. And it applies here as well. You have to start with your why. Why is God calling me to write this? Why am I obeying? And it can be as simple as because God told me to. But why am I obeying? What is my outcome? Why am I doing this? Why would someone out there pick this book up and read it? What is the transformation that they would be looking for? What are they hoping to gain by reading this book? What's my why? What is my why? And you're going to work that out into how am I going to really dig into who is this for? Why am I doing this? Why would they read it? The second step is you are going to refine and organize. So once you have your why, you're going to start putting out all of these ideas, mind mapping. And you're going to put out all of these ideas that you believe need to be in this book, right? You're keeping that why forefront in your mind, and you're constantly thinking of what the themes are, what points you want to make, all of these things. And then you're going to have this big mess. That's what a mind map looks like. It's a big mess. And you're going to then take that big mess and refine it and organize it into themes and a structure that will guide your reader from the pain point that they're in now to the finished work that they have, and are like, yes, that's the transformation. So you're guiding them from the pain to the payoff. That is what you're trying to do, guide them from the pain to the payoff. And that's where this refine and organize step is going to be, is you're going to literally go through, organize, outline these points that you have. Step 3, infuse with impact. This is where you're going to do some storytelling. So for some of you, you might be like, great, I'm a fiction writer. This is great. The themes and organization, that kind of seemed a little weird for me for a fiction writer. It's not, but we'll talk about that privately. Infused with impact, the storytelling, that makes sense to me as a fiction writer. And for my nonfiction, you're now flipped. You're like, okay, the themes and the points and the organizing, that made perfect sense for me as a nonfiction writer. I've writing personal development. This makes sense to me. Storytelling, what? So depending on which side of the coin you are, one of these two is going to seem weird to you, but they're both essential for both types of writers. For it doesn't matter what genre you're in, you actually have to have both of these. So let's talk specifically to nonfiction, because this makes so much sense for fiction. I don't need to go into it here for fiction. But for nonfiction writers, why would we do storytelling? Well, let's go back to slide 1. Jesus used storytelling as a teaching tool. He taught through parables. Why? Because it's more interesting, because we remember it easier. If Jesus had given us a 5-point sermon, even with the beautiful alliterations that our pastors can come up with, on why we needed to be faithful with the God entrusted us to, we would probably not remember those 5 points. However, most Christians who have been in reading their Bible, been in church services for any length of time, have probably been taught about the parable of the talents and can probably tell you most of it. It's because we remember stories. And so if you want to take your reader from their current pain point to their payoff, one of the best ways to do that is through storytelling. One of the most impactful storytelling elements you can use is talking about your own personal story. How did your personal testimony go from where you were in the same pain they're in now to where you now are living in the payoff they wish they had? By infusing that outline that you created in step 2 with the storytelling techniques that you can use in step 3, you're going to create something they actually want to read. You ever in college and had a professor whose lectures were so boring, it was a literal struggle to stay awake, and you had to bring coffee or a Red Bull or something because you were not staying awake through this guy's lecture with his yellowed legal pad notes from 1970 that he'd not refreshed? And it was just point after point after point. If you don't infuse your nonfiction book with storytelling, unfortunately, it can start coming off that way. And people will zone out. They'll not read the book. They'll not finish the book. And then they are not going to be getting the payoff that they bought the book for. And that's why you wrote the book, is so they get that payoff. So this is a critical step. It's almost more critical for nonfiction than fiction, because with fiction writers, it's sort of just a given that you're telling a story. But with nonfiction, it is critical. All right, so that's steps 1 through 3. Step 4. Now we're going to turn this into a manuscript. Well, what do you mean by that? I mean, you're going to start off writing like Getting to the finish line is your one and only job. Like it is the thing your life is depending on. And you're not going to worry about everything being beautiful. You're not going to worry about all the stuff. You need a skeleton to hang the meat of this on. Then we're at step 4, where you're going to start turning it into a manuscript. You're going to start going back through and rereading it. And you're going to start tweaking the language to make the language more beautiful and more interesting. You're going to start making sure that the story is telling itself and moving the reader. You're going to start cutting things out because the pacing is bogged down in that section. You're going to start adding because you realize, oh, wait, people are going to get confused here. So I need to add here. And you're going to start layering on to that skeleton all of the meat. And then you're going to start making it beautiful. So that is turning it from your original draft, which will be terrible, and as it should be, that means you're doing the right thing, into a manuscript that you go, oh wow, this might actually be pretty good. That's where you need to be, going from a kind of draft to a wow, okay, manuscript. That all happens in step 4. Notice this is after we're very clear on our why and why we're writing. After we've already worked out our organization, we have our structure, we know what points we're going to be talking about. After we've figured out how we're going to infuse this with impact, what the story is that we're going to be telling throughout. Maybe we're giving anecdotes in a nonfiction. Maybe we have our entire plot structure laid out. But that's that step 3. Then we're going in and putting in all the meat. You don't have to worry about adding all the meat to the bones until the skeleton already exists. Then step 4, elevate through editing. Writing is the process of rewriting. It's a quote that you'll hear over and over and over again in the world of literature and writing. And that is because it is just gospel truth. You never are publishing the first thing you write. You seldom are publishing the 10th thing you write. It's always the process of rewriting. In fact, professional authors are going to be going through a minimum of 3 rounds of professional editing. And I will suggest the same thing to you as well. So you're going to be repeatedly refining, editing, and rewriting. But before you ever even send it to a professional editor, which 100% I believe you should, before you ever send it to a professional editor, you have to do some serious editing yourself. Here's the first step. Put it away for a week. I know that sounds crazy, but we get so used to hearing it and we get so into what we're writing that we can become blind to the things that an objective reader would pick up immediately. One of the ways that helps is simply by setting it aside for a couple of days and then coming back and rereading it with fresh eyes. There's also some very practical steps that you can go through, such as looking for too many ly words, looking for places where you're telling the reader about things instead of showing them, looking for pacing issues where it's really moving too fast right here and there needs to be a little bit of a break, or more than likely, it's really slow right here and I need to cut some things to speed up the pace. And that's both fiction and nonfiction. If you're reading through nonfiction and it's like, come on, get to the point already, that means your pacing is off. Again, all of this is before a professional ever sees the draft, before that first editor takes a look at it. You're going to be elevating that manuscript through editing yourself. Once you have done all of the steps in the right framework, then you're going to be bringing on professionals. Often, I would recommend that you already have a book coach on board. Book coach would be on board from the beginning of this framework. Then you would be bringing on a professional editor. You'd be bringing on cover designers. You'd be bringing on formatters. You'd be bringing on marketing experts, all to move you through the rest of the process. Let's talk about one more before I move on. Types of publishing, self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Clearly, I have a self-publishing bias. However, I am more of a traditionally published author than I am a self-published author if you look at book count. I have more traditionally published than I do self-published books. I have multiples of both, but I have more traditionally published ones. The main difference would occur at this point too. This right framework would take place before either direction in terms of where you were heading for publication. This would be the point you would be deciding, you know what, I'm self-publishing. Here's the new professionals I'm bringing on board on my team. Or now I'm going to be querying agents who can query the publishing houses and find a traditional publisher. You would be doing this framework before any of the publication would be happening. So whether you were going traditional route or a self-publishing route, you could use this framework first. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Now, knowing what to do is only the first step. Let me take a drink of water. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I think it's important to bring on a book coach early in the process, someone who can give you that clarity and confidence, who can help you with a customized writing plan so that you know what to write, when to write, and you're following that plan. Someone who can give you expert guidance and publishing strategy, marketing strategy before the book ever comes out. Because if you spend 6 months writing something that you think is just an absolute masterpiece, only to figure out that the market for that book is super small, you might have changed your whole mind about how to market it, how to package it, how to just even set up the whole book. You really have to be thinking about how it's going to be going out from the very beginning. And then how do you use your platform to impact sales? Because sales is what impacts people's lives. All of these things need to be thought about in the whole process. So in my program, Christian Writers Arise, we walk through that process where we start off talking about calling and confidence, where we clarify our calling, build our confidence as writers, and learn about how to overcome those blocks. We then go into systems and support where we're actually getting the book written. This is where we use the W.R.I.T.E framework. We create our writing systems so that we can actually get it finished. And we start looking at our team. Is our team going to be a traditional publishing team with the literary agent and the editors and things that the publishing house chooses? Or are we going to build our own team and go a self-publishing route? Then we want to talk about connection and cash flow. How are we going to launch our book? Leverage our platform for sales, and then take those sales to fuel our mission of our service providing, our coaching, our author journey. So this is the framework for that Christian Writers Arise coaching. In 90 days, we go through those 3 pillars of the program so that you have a clear path. You can move forward with confidence, and you have all the tools that you will need to make sure that your book goes from this idea and calling to actually an edited manuscript ready to move forward to the next steps. But, right? We always say, oh, there's so many things. Let me tell you, no time, we can work with your schedule. Most, if not all, of the authors in the program right now work 9-to-5 jobs. They're all full-time doing other things. They have busy businesses. They're entrepreneurs. They are parents. They have small children. Some of their children have medical issues. They're all super busy. And we learn how to work within the time God has given us, because God has given every single one of us the same amount of time. And it's about how do we structure and prioritize around our time, and where can we find those segments in order to get to writing. You feel like you're not a writer? Like, you know what, Carolyn, I made C's in high school English. What on earth am I doing this for? God equips the called. Moses and God had a whole conversation recorded in the book for us where Moses says, God, I'm not a speaker. And God says, yeah, you'll be fine. Go, I'll give you the words. And Moses kept pushing back till God finally took that calling from him and said, okay, I'll send Aaron with you and he can speak for you. But God was ready and able. God's immediate response was not, Oh, you know what, Moses, you're right. I forgot about the fact that I didn't make you a good speaker. Oh, that wasn't God's response. God's response was, Moses, I got this. I know who I'm talking to. If God has called you to write and your response is, God, I'm not a writer, he's going to tell you the same thing he told Moses. I know who I'm talking to. I got this. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, well, I'm not sure all of that will work. That seems too much. That seems too overwhelming. Well, that's the whole point of having a book coach, to have someone there who walks with you every step of the way so that when you're so stressed out and you just cannot imagine being able to take the next step, you do what literally one of my clients did just this week, sent me an SOS text message saying, Carolyn, I've got to meet with you. I am struggling. I said, got you, girl. Here we go. Here's the link. Set up a coaching call. Here's the spots I'm available. Let's meet. And we met. And when we ended the call, her exact words were, thank you for being who you are and being faithful to what God has called you to do. This has completely shifted how I'm thinking about this. Having someone in your corner who can walk you through those rough spots, because they're going to come, but who can walk you through them so that you're not alone, is so critical to every writer's journey. That's why writers have writing groups and writing communities, because we need people. Writing can be such a solitary process. We need people. And so we have to create communities to help us. And if this is the first time you've ever walked through this writing journey, having somebody go with you who's been there before and who's faced the struggles and who knows what it feels like and knows what they have done to move through them and who can rely on God to help you and pray with you. This is exactly what you need. Don't wait. This is limited offer because I do keep the impact very much one-on-one, even though it is a group coaching program. I can't give that same one-on-one impact if I have 5,000 authors in the program. I do limit the number of authors in the program. So this is a limited time offer, and there's not going to be many authors who are accepted into the program. If you're interested, now is the time to act while the doors are open. Because once I reach that limit, that I will not be able to give that one-on-one impact, then I will have to close the doors until some of the books that are in the program now are written and they are moving into the next. I just want to make sure everybody knows there is a time limit and there is a certain limit to the number of people who can join the program. That's just a physical limit that I have because of the quality that I want to make sure I'm offering. What is the next step? The next step is simple. Just raise your hand via email, via in the chat, via wherever, and you say, you know what, I want to know more. Talk to me about more. What's the cost? What's it look like? What are the logistics? I need more information. And I will send that information to you. We can set up a short 10-minute chat to find out if this is actually for you or not. And if I believe that you're at a different stage, maybe you're not at a stage where you need a book coach. Maybe you need an editor. I can give you guidance and direction around what stage you're actually at and what would be the best next step for you. So let's chat. Let's find out exactly what we can do to make sure you have the best next step. And I'm so grateful for those of you who joined the VIP. And if you have not yet gotten the link to sign up for the coaching call, please do that. I cannot wait to dig in and spend that 45 minutes with you, really going deep into your specific project so that we can make sure you are so set up for success. So I'm super excited about helping each of you with that as well.